The FIBA World Cup is just around the corner, and the US is playing their exhibition lead up games. And I am super excited about the World Cup and super excited about this US team. I figured I'd pop on the US jersey for this. Not a basketball jersey, but that's okay. And I've been missing basketball, so I'm excited to be able to talk about Team USA and this World Cup. I'm definitely going to be recapping every World Cup game, not necessarily recapping every one of these lead up games. Like I didn't really, make one after the Puerto Rico game because that's not as exciting, but I figured out after this Slovenia game, we've now kind of seen the rotations, seen how this team is going to play. So I figured now is a good time to talk about it, talk about what we've seen from the team so far, strengths, weaknesses, things like that. I really love the makeup of this team. I think in the past, the teams just haven't been constructed very well. This team maybe doesn't have the superstar players, but they have a lot of stars and a lot of stars that I think fit super well together. We may not have the Damian Lillard, the Jason Tatum types like we have in the past for, Olympics or even the World Cup. But I think in the past our teams haven't been built super well. Like I can't remember if it was the Olympics or the World Cup, but we only had like one point guard, one guy who could handle the ball, and it was Damian Lillard, and it just went super poorly because of that. And so you have guys like Gilbert Arenas. I saw his comments about this team, and it's like, oh, these guys are like would be the fifth choice for the US team. And I just think comments like that are really, really dumb because, first of all, these guys are great, great players on this Team USA team and are still clearly on paper the best team in the world. But I think on top of that, it is about fit and it's also about the willingness to play. You don't want guys who aren't going to give it their all. And I think with this group, there's a lot of young guys and a lot of guys who seem to really want to play. And I think that's the guy that most encapsulates that type of energy is Anthony Edwards. I think there's been a lot of hype about how Ant could be the go-to guy offensively for this team when they need a bucket. And I think that can be true. But I think there are also a lot of other offensive weapons. You look at Brandon Ingram or Jalen Brunson, a lot of guys that can go get you a bucket. So I don't even think that that's necessarily the most important thing for him. But in these two games so far that the US has played, the main thing that I've noticed for the US as a whole is the defense. And Anthony Edwards, I think, is really leading that. He's going out there and just getting into guys' faces, giving it 100% defensively, even against a team like Puerto Rico, who, no offense, is not a great team. I mean, they're good, but not obviously compared to the US. And it's an exhibition game, and it's the first exhibition game, but Anthony Edwards is still coming out and setting the tone defensively. And so I think for me, that's why I'm so excited because it seems like we have a group of guys that really wants this. And if they're taking it that seriously, then it makes it so much more fun to watch because then I think the fans get more into it. Everyone gets more into it then. So let's go through the roster, I guess. The starters in both the games have been Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards, Mikal Bridges, Brandon Ingram, and Jaren Jackson Jr. Then off the bench, we have Tyrese Halliburton, Austin Reeves, Cam Johnson, Paolo Banchero, Bobby Portis, and Walker Kessler. And then Josh Hart. Forgot about Josh Hart because I don't think he played in the first game, so I didn't have him down there. So starting with the starting lineup, that starting lineup, I think the biggest strength is the defense for that starting lineup. The length. I already talked about Anthony Edwards getting into guys and really defending. And then you have Mikal Bridges Brandon Ingram and Jaren Jackson Jr. in the front court. That is a lot of length. Obviously, Jaren protecting the rim. I think in FIBA, they're allowed to be a little more physical, and that will help him. He only gets 5 fouls instead of the 6, like in the NBA, but he's allowed to be more physical, so that will help with his foul trouble. And with the length, you see a lot of steals, you see a lot of blocked shots, and then the team can run the other way. And I think that's something that Steve Kerr and this coaching staff want, is for this team to run. I think that's been very clear that they want to push the ball and get in transition and get easy buckets. And 4 out of the 5 in that starting lineup can just get the board and go. Even Jaren, if he needs to and has space, could do that. But really, Mikal Bridges, Brandon Ingram, Anthony Edwards, Jalen Brunson, all of them can get the ball and go. And so I think it's going to be very hard for teams to score on that starting lineup. And then also, I think you have 4 guys that can go get a bucket at any point in that starting lineup. But not just 4 guys that can go get a bucket. I think you also have guys that can play off ball too. I think Anthony Edwards can do that. Mikal Bridges, we know, can do that. And I think Brandon Ingram can do that. And I think with Brandon Ingram, he's a guy that can definitely win us a game just with his scoring. I think every time he catches the ball, he doesn't want to pass the ball. He wants to score. And I think we've seen for everyone on this roster, it's all about ball movement and player movement. But with Brandon Ingram, the ball kind of sticks, but I think it's okay the way that he plays. Because if everyone else is moving the ball, you need someone to go get you a bucket sometimes. And I think Brandon Ingram can do that. He can be the Kevin Durant of this team, because he kind of plays like Kevin Durant. I think with the players around him and the spacing, he can go one-on-one and isolate and get whatever shot he wants, really. And he wasn't really knocking him down in this game against Slovenia, but there are going to be games where he is knocking him down, and that's going to win us the game. So I'm really excited about what Brandon Ingram's going to bring to this team. And then kind of moving to the bench, Halliburton had like 12 assists off the bench against Puerto Rico. And for him, I think he can thrive in this transition-based team, just creating for everyone. But then also, I'm always just so confident when he has the ball in his hands that he's going to make the right play and find something, even if it doesn't seem like anything's really happening on offense. And I think when that bench comes in, when it's, Halliburton coming in, Austin Reeves coming in, and then we go smaller at the 5 because we're not really playing Walker Kessler. Although I think Walker Kessler is a good guy to have in case Jaren Jackson Jr. gets into foul trouble or we just need a bigger body. I like Walker Kessler in that role. But, we played Bobby Portis at the 5 against Puerto Rico in the first half. Like, he was the first guy off the bench, and then in this one, it was Paolo. I think it's probably going to be Paolo coming off the bench first. But Bobby Portis did play a lot of minutes against Slovenia as well. But I think going smaller there, it just allows the team to run even more. The defense is definitely weaker. Off the bench, we don't have the same length. Halliburton's not a great defender. Austin Reeves not a great defender. And then you're lacking that rim protector like Jaren Jackson Jr. Of course, you could play Walker Kessler, but I think off the bench, you're sacrificing a little bit of that defense to get more offense and get more in transition. And a guy that I especially like off the bench is Cam Johnson. I think he's a super underrated part of this team because he's a guy that for his whole career has played the role of a 3-and-D guy, and that's not going to change on this team. He's just going to play the exact same role. And we've seen it already. I think he was like tied for the most points against Puerto Rico with like 15, I think it was. In this one, he scored 8, knocked down a couple of threes, and I think he can be really good on the defensive end with that bench unit, getting deflections and getting out in transition and then knocking down threes. Austin Reeves has looked pretty good offensively. Paolo has looked solid offensively. I think Bobby Portis has looked solid offensively. I think this team in general has looked pretty good offensively. They struggled making threes against Puerto Rico, struggled making threes in the first half against Slovenia. I think that's nothing to worry about. They'll start making their threes, and they did in the second half against Slovenia a bit. But then I think one surprise for me is Paolo on the defensive end. Like I knew he's an athletic guy, but his rim protection in these two games, obviously small sample size as is everything about these two games, but his rim protection has been great. He had two back-to-back blocks in this one against Slovenia, had some good moments against Puerto Rico too. So that's encouraging with him playing that small ball five. And even Josh Hart in this game against Slovenia, he honestly got more minutes than I thought he would. I think he was out with an injury against Puerto Rico. And in this one, he came in and I thought he played really well on the offensive end. Struggled to dribble the ball, but when he wasn't dribbling the ball, he was doing good things. And those good things that he was doing was cutting to the basket. And what he did really well a few times was get the pass when he was cutting and then make that kick out pass immediately to a 3-point shooter. He did that a couple times for assists. The real test, though, is going to come when the U.S. plays against Spain. They thought it would be against Slovenia, would be a good test, but Luka didn't play, which was unfortunate. I just really like how this team is constructed. I love the ball movement, especially in the first three quarters. It got a little stagnant in the fourth quarter there for a little bit, but I'm loving the ball movement, the player movement, the defense by the starters. I think the one hole that I've really seen is when that bench unit comes in. Obviously, it's not like a line change, but even when just, Austin Reeves comes in for, I think he came in for Mikal Bridges at one point. It's a lot less defense. The team becomes a lot less versatile. And so that's, I would say, the one weakness that I've seen for this team. Like at one point they went with a Brunson, Halliburton, Reeves lineup, and that was just not a good defensive lineup. And I do worry a little when like Bobby Portis is out there. Teams can put him in the pick and roll and maybe exploit that. Same with Paolo, but I don't think we've seen Paolo get exposed as much as we have with Bobby, which is why I think Paolo will play more over Bobby Portis there. But I'm just very excited to watch this team. I will probably make a video after the Spain game because that's a big game. I don't know if I'll do that for the rest of the lead up games, but I will definitely make more videos leading up to the World Cup. And then once the World Cup comes around, if I can, I will make recaps for every single US game. So anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I guess, I don't know, should I have a new name for the podcast when it's not the Kings, when it's the US? The States Report? I don't know. I need to think about that, I guess. Because there are no Kings on this roster, which is a little disappointing. Keegan was on the select team, but Fox declined his invite. Obviously, he's recovering from the broken finger as well as becoming a father, as well as probably just not wanting to do it anyways because he got rejected for Derek White the first time. But anyways, I will be back to recap that game against Spain tomorrow. Peace.